Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make 5 fall wreaths. You'll find timestamps below in the description of this video, as well as supplies lists for all the wreaths in this tutorial. Let me take a quick moment to welcome anyone new here to the channel. Still Waters is all about step-by-step wreath and door swag tutorials. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us. Welcome to Still Waters Wreath Designs. Come on in. DIY easy fall door swag using the 5-gallon paint stir stick method. We are going to make a fall door swag using a 5-gallon paint stir stick. You can actually buy these in bulk from Amazon. They come in a package of 10. Before we start talking through our supplies, go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun so that can be heating up. So these 5-gallon stir sticks, friends, they are 17 inches in length and about an inch wide. And they've got a little indent here, which is intended for the stirring, but it makes for a great spot to add a hanger. So we're going to lay this down here and we'll go ahead and add some pipe cleaners. That's our very first step. These are just standard 12-inch pipe cleaners. And so I'm just going to take my 12-inch pipe cleaner and make a loop in the center. It kind of looks like an elongated awareness ribbon. And I'm going to give it 2 or 3 twists, like so. And then I'm going to wrap it right around where this indentation is. This will essentially be the back side. And so I'm just going to give that several tight twists, like so. And then I'll use my small snips here to trim off the excess bit of those pipe cleaners and push those down so that they're flush. So now that we've added our hanging pipe cleaner, let's go ahead and add our pipe cleaners onto the stir stick, which is how we'll be securing down our deco mesh. And so we're going to take 2 pipe cleaners at the top, and I'm just going to run that underneath so that they're essentially the same length. And I'm going to give it a couple of twists and then point those guys off to the side. We're going to add our second pipe cleaner in the exact same spot, giving it a side twist on the opposite side. So it looks something like this. We're going to come down to the bottom of our stir stick and do that same thing. You're just going to want to come up about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. And again, we'll be adding 2. Pointing one off to one side and one off to the other. And you want those pipe cleaners laying right next to one another. And we're going to do that same thing in the middle. You're welcome to measure your stir stick if you'd like. I'm just going to eyeball it. And again, adding 2 side by side. One set pointing in one direction and one in the other. So it looks something like this. And then in between each set of 2, we're going to add a single pipe cleaner right in the middle of those 2. And again, I'm just eyeballing it, not looking for perfection. Give it a couple of tight twists and point those guys straight up. And we'll add one more to the next section. Again, just a single pipe cleaner pointing straight up. So essentially we've added 9 total pipe cleaners to this paint stir stick. We've added 3 sets of 2 for our deco mesh holders. We've added 2 singles, and then on the back side we've added 1 as a hook. Once you've got those guys secured down, go ahead and take some hot glue and run a couple of beads over every single spot. where the front pipe cleaners meet. And that just keeps it from shifting. Doesn't need to be pretty, guys. Nobody's gonna see it. Once you've got your dollops of glue at all those connecting points, go ahead and sit your paint stir stick off to the side and we'll prep our deco mesh. You'll either want to grab a good pair of scissors and your ruler or tape measure, or in my case, I'll be using my self-healing mat and my rotary cutter. Friends, if you are new to wreath making or door swag making and you've not yet seen a rotary cutter, it's basically one of the first tools I would recommend that you add to your wreath making toolbox. And basically it works just like a pizza cutter, and it will allow you to cut your deco mesh quickly with nice clean lines. I'll leave a link for this for you below. So for this door swag, we're going to use 3 different types of 10-inch deco mesh. We've got a solid metallic orange, a burlap, and a solid black. And we've got 8 pipe cleaners that we'll be adding deco mesh into. And we're going to add a burlap piece to every single set of ties. So we're going to need 8 cuts of the burlap. Let's start with that. And we're going to measure our pieces at 20 inches in length. So with your rotary cutter or your scissors, go ahead and cut out 8 20-inch pieces of your burlap. Now we're going to cut 4 20-inch pieces of the orange and 4 20-inch pieces of the black. Once you've cut all of your deco mesh pieces, go ahead and grab your paint stir stick and bring it back to your work area. So our next step is to add our deco mesh pieces into each of our ties here on our paint stir stick. And we're going to add 2 cruffles to every single set of ties. We're going to add the burlap color to every set of ties, and then we're going to alternate back and forth between the orange and the black. So to make a cruffle, also known as a woodland ruffle, you're going to grab your piece of deco mesh and lay it in your workstation, curl side up. And this is a great technique to use for deco mesh because if you're new to working with deco mesh, you'll soon learn that deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help prevent that fray is always ideal. And the cruffle method, or the woodland ruffle method, tucks away those raw edges to really help prevent exposure and the fray. And so all you're going to do is on one side, let me just add a little weight here, on one side of your piece of deco mesh, again, it's curl side up, you're just going to curl in that end a couple of times, creating this little tube, which tucks away your raw edge. And then to keep things simple, I like to use a chip clip or a clothespin. They just came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree. Hold that curl together. Flip your piece of deco mesh around and do the exact same thing at the other end, just a couple of curls. And then you're going to ruffle the rest of your mesh. And to do so, you're going to use your thumbs as the stationary placeholders. And then with your 8 fingers, just crawl that mesh back into your thumbs all the way to the end of your piece. Remove that clip, and you've just created your first woodland ruffle or cruffle. And so what that really means, friends, you've got a curl on each end and then the ruffle in the middle. We're going to come into our paint stir stick, and we will just add that cruffle right into our first set of pipe cleaner ties all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. So we've added our burlap cruffle, and now I'm just going to grab orange just because it was closest to me. But remember, we're going to add 2 cruffles to every single set of ties. So I'm going to curl that end in a couple of times and hold it with my clip. Remember, my mesh was curl side up. Doing the same thing at the opposite end and crawling that mesh into my fingers. I've just made my second cruffle. And since the first cruffle, the curls were going in one direction, for the second cruffle, we're going to have them go in the opposite direction. So one time we'll lay it like this and then like this, almost like a plus sign. And again, all the way down to the base. Give it a couple of tight, tight twists. And point those guys right back up. Now we'll jump over to the other side. So I'm grabbing a piece of my burlap. I'm going to curl the end in here a couple of times and hold it with my clip. Spin my piece of mesh around and do the same thing to the opposite end. And making my cruffle. I'll come back to my paint stir stick and come over here to the opposite side, placing that cruffle all the way down to the base, right there in the middle, and giving it a couple of tight, tight twists. Now, since we used orange last time, this time I'll use black. So basically we'll be alternating between the black and orange. Just to give us a nice variety. And I'm going to add that right on top of our burlap mesh all the way down to the base. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 tight, tight twists. And I'll fluff out my cruffle. So we're going to repeat this same pattern, friends, all the way up our paint stir stick. And so I'm going to kind of alternate back and forth. So for the lower set of 2, I've got orange and black. So on my next set of 2, I'll probably do black and orange and then back to orange and black, just so for some variation. So go ahead and add 1 burlap cruffle and 1 alternating of the black and orange cruffle to every single set of ties, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now we've got our paint stir stick fully loaded with our Deco mesh. So you should have 2 woodland ruffles or cruffles added into each set of pipe cleaner ties. And at this point, friends, now that we've added in all of our Deco mesh, it is measuring about 24 inches in length and 12 inches in width, probably every bit of 8 to 10 inches in depth. Look how stinking cute that is. And this is what it looks like from the back. So adorable. And so now what we're going to do is make a cute bow to add to our very center of our swag. So I'm going to set my swag off to the side, and I've grabbed 2 12-inch pipe cleaners, and I'm going to actually marry those together, friends, so that they are longer because our swag has such depth to it. And so to elongate your 2 pipe cleaners, you're just going to make an X with about 1 inch or so of each of those pipe cleaners at the top, and then starting at one side, you're just going to twist, twist, twist like so until you reach the end, and then you'll do the exact same thing with that other side. Perfect. And so we've just made a 22-inch length pipe cleaner, which I feel like will be better for our swag. And now we're just going to use a few different types of wired ribbon. And really, guys, you can use any ribbon you'd like as long as it matches and coordinates well with your swag. My personal preference is that I usually mix up a 2.5-inch width ribbon with a couple of 1.5-inch ribbons. You can certainly, you know, tweak that and do it as you wish. I just recommend that you always use a wired ribbon so that your bow will shape the way that you want it to and it's not floppy. So this ribbon, I'm not sure if you can see, but it's got a really cute fuzzy orange edging and then those really cute different textured pumpkins. And so I'm going to measure 8-inch tails just using my self-healing mat for measurements. You can also use your ruler. So I've identified 8 inches and I'm going to pinch that together in my hand, give that a twist. I'm going to measure 8 inches again. That'll give me a 4-inch loop. So once you've identified 8 inches, just bring that down into your hand, pinch and gather, give it a twist. We're going to measure 8 inches again. Bring that back into your hand. Like so. Then I'm going to measure that tail at 8 inches and cut it off. And I'm just being approximate here, friends. Nobody's going to be measuring your tails, I promise you that. And now I'm going to repeat the same thing, but with my loops going the opposite direction. So I'm going to measure out an 8-inch tail, pinch that and place that in my hand. This time my tail's going the opposite direction. I'm going to give that a twist, so it's going to be pretty side out. Identify that 8-inch mark and fold it in. Like so. I'm going to give that a twist. Measure out 8 inches again. And make my last loop. One more tail coming out at 8 inches, approximately. And I'll trim that guy off. So basically we've got 4 tails and 4 loops. My left hand will be my holding hand and my right hand will continue to be my working hand. And now I'm going to do the black and white 1.5 inch chevron, and this time I'm going to make 6-inch tails. I'll place that in my hand, give that a twist. I'll make 6-inch measurements for 3-inch loops. Give that a twist. Measure it out again. Sorry guys, I know it's sloppy looking here, but the process will work. I'm going to measure out my tail again to approximately 6 inches. Cut that off. So for this ribbon, guys, I've got just 2 loops and 2 tails instead of 4 and 4. And now I'm going to repeat the same process with my last ribbon, 2 loops, 2 tails at 6 inches. So a 6-inch tail, pinching that together, giving that a twist, measuring it out to 6 inches, folding that guy in, giving it a twist. And for this one, I'm just going to eyeball, guys. I'll pull those loops up to make sure they're the same length, and they are. And I'll cut that off. So now I've got this big old bow stack in my hand. I'm going to take my pipe cleaner, kind of make it into a loose V. And I'm going to wrap that guy right around this ribbon stack. And give it several tight twists. Like so. Now, the thing about bows, guys, look how messy that is. Bows are not pretty when you first make them. They just aren't. So don't panic, because we're going to fix that. The next thing we need to do is dovetail all of our ribbon tail ends. And to make a dovetail, you're going to fold that ribbon over onto itself, grab your scissors and come down on the folded side, not the open side, about 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches, and cut up diagonally like so. And then when you open it, you've got that nice, pretty dovetail. So let's go ahead and dovetail all of our ribbon tails. All right, now we've got all of our tails trimmed out. And again, it looks like a hot mess, guys. That's okay. We're going to fix that. So just making sure your tails are pretty side up. Let's add this guy into our swag. And I basically want this to be right in the middle. You could place it at the top if you wanted to, but I'd like to place mine right in the middle. And so the first thing I want to do is the middle set of pipe cleaners. I'm going to trim those guys off. I'm not going to trim off any others because I'm not sure if we're going to be adding any more in. But since we're doing a bow in the center, let's just go ahead and get rid of these guys. Just trim those guys off and toss them away. And if you need help finding that center set, friends, just flip it over where you can easily identify, and that will also show you your center point. And then we're going to, my finger is marking the back so I can kind of find that with my hand. I'm just going to weave these pipe cleaners, one around each side. Now you want it to be nice and taut, but you don't want to pull it so tightly that your bow is, you know, recessed down in. So now that I've identified it, I'm just going to give it a single loose twist to make sure I didn't recede that in too far. And I didn't. And now that I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and give it a couple, 2 or 3 secure, not necessarily tight twists. And then I'm going to cut off the excess bit of my pipe cleaner. Point those ends inward, and now I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just give that 2 or 3 squeezes to really secure that guy down. And now we'll have to give it a couple of minutes to dry. All right, guys, our glue is nice and dry, so let's go ahead and fluff out our bow a little bit. And basically, remember that 2.5 inch, we've got 4 loops and 4 tails. So you're going to want those loops and tails kind of going in an X pattern from one another. And to open my loops, I just place my hands in there and kind of stretch them out a little bit. Go ahead and jerk on your loops as you need to. You don't need to be super delicate. So I'm going to just start at the bottom, open up those loops. Make sure those tails are also going in a nice X, like so. And then I'll move up to that next layer with our 1.5 inch. And remember, we only made 2 loops of each. So we're going to have our orange going in one direction in the black and white chevron in the other. Open those loops up with our hands. And just work on those tails. You can give your tails some curve by placing them between your 2 fingers, pulling them up and over, and that's going to just give them a cute little bump. Just like that. How stinking adorable. We're going to add a few more ribbon tails into our swag, friends. We're only going to use the 2 1.5 inch ribbon types. So I want you to cut 4 pieces of each of the ribbon types at 14 inches in length. So let me show you a quick way to measure here, friends. I just find that 14-inch mark like so, and then I'm going to fold it over accordion style the number of times for the pieces that I need, in this case 4. So there's 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and cut your ribbon off. And so now you've got this accordion style folded ribbon, and then fold that guy over. We're going to dovetail those ends just like we did before. Come down about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, cut up diagonally. We've just separated those ends and dovetailed them all at the same time. Flip that ribbon stack over, make sure your ends are married up nicely, and do that same thing. Just like so. And now what we've done here, guys, we've just measured, cut to separate, and dovetailed all in one motion. Great time saver. Let's do the same thing for the black and white chevron. We need 4 pieces at 14 inches in length. We're going to add 2 sets of ribbon tails to the bottom of our swag and 2 towards the top. So what I want you to do, guys, is take one of each of your ribbon types, make a loose X with them, and then kind of pinch and crawl them in the middle so they look something like this, and then kind of pull them down over your thumb so they're sort of going all in one direction. Come over to your swag and the bottom set of ties. We're going to add 1 set of tails to each of those pipe cleaners. So place them all the way down to the center. Give those pipe cleaners 3 or 4 tight twists. Then trim off your excess bit of pipe cleaner because you won't need those anymore. And then I just take my fingers and kind of curl them back and out of the way. And I'm going to fluff out those ribbon tails like so. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. So I'm grabbing one of each ribbon type, making a loose X like so. I'm going to scrunch and gather that guy in the middle, give it a pinch, kind of pull all those tails down, and then I'm going to add them right next to the last set of tails we added in. Placing them down into that pipe cleaner all the way to that base. Give those pipe cleaner ends 3 or 4 tight twists. Then trim off that excess bit of pipe cleaner. Curl those ends back and under with your fingers and fluff out those tails. And again, if you run your fingers up and over, it's going to give them a cute little curly bump, just like so. Now I'm going to flip over my swag and we're going to do the same thing to those top 2. How stinking cute is this coming along, guys? Adorable, adorable. All right, let's add some embellishments into this cutie. I've grabbed 2 candy corn picks. These are actually from the Dollar Tree. We'll add 1 to the top of our swag and 1 at the bottom. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not generally fond of Dollar Tree picks. However, I thought these were really cute. Now, because they're Dollar Tree, I want to make sure they're secure, so I'm just going to pull on each of those candy corn pieces and make sure they're on there nice and securely. They are on a wire base, so you can spread them out as you wish. And I'm just pulling them apart a little bit just to give them some depth, like so. And I'm going to trim off the stem. We don't need it. It's probably 6 inches long. We don't need it that long. I'd say 2 inches is plenty, or 3. And we're going to add this guy. We're going to add it pretty close to the bottom, kind of nestled between those 2 ribbon tail stacks, but up just a tad. I've curved this just a little bit so it lays as I want it to, and I'm just going to run about 1.5 inches bead of glue right there on that pick and push that guy right in there, like so. And then I'm going to flip this guy around and we're going to do the same thing at the top. So I'm going to trim down my stem. We don't need that guy crazy long. And we'll do the same thing here at the top. Again, just running about 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches bead of glue and nestling that candy corn pick right down in there. Just make sure it's got something to grab a hold of. Oh my goodness, you guys, this thing is so stinking cute. So while those are anchoring down, go ahead and grab your small snips and kind of just work your way through your swag and trim off any of those excess cleaners and discard them. We're going to add a couple of these cute little foam pumpkins into our swag as well. These came in bulk from Hobby Lobby, but you can grab them from nearly anywhere. And we're going to turn them into a pick. Guys, they actually come in a bag, just a mesh bag like this with a variety of different sizes and shapes. But let me show you a little pro tip. Anytime you're working with florals, and most florals come on a nice wire stem, guys, I always keep 2 or 3 leftover wire bases specifically for making my own picks. And so what you need to do is just trim off 3 to 4 inches like so. Identify where you want to add your embellishment. In our case, we're going to add that guy right there. And then based on the angle, take your wire stem bit, poke that guy right into your embellishment, pull it right out, add a little pea-sized dollop of glue, and then poke your wire back in. That'll just help hold it in place, like so. So you want it inside the piece, a good inch or so, and then you want a good inch or 2, depending on the depth, available to go down into your base. I add a little bit more hot glue, and then you can press that guy right down in. Hold it for about 20 seconds or so, just give it a time to grab. And then we're going to add one more up here at the top, following that same pro tip method. So I've cut this one a little bit smaller because our pumpkin is smaller. And I want it to sit off to an angle like so. And so I'm going to push it into my pumpkin at an angle, pull it back out, add a pea-sized amount of glue, and then press that wire bit right back in there. Be careful of that glue, it's hot. I add a little bit more glue right around that base, and of course a little bead on that wire pick that we've just made, and then nestle that guy right down in. And again, hold it for about 30 seconds or so to give it a good amount of grab time. All right, and last but not least, I've got one extra candy corn pick, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just trim those guys right off of that pick, leaving about an inch of that stem. And we're just going to nestle them into our swag. So I think I'm going to add one extra candy corn to each of the stems at the top and the bottom, and one in the center. So just running a bit of glue right on that stem and a little dollop onto the actual piece of candy corn to anchor this guy down. Like so. Oh my goodness, how stinking cute, you guys. I'm going to bend this stem a little bit, like so. It's almost at a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to run some glue right on that stem and about a dime-size amount on the back of that candy corn. I'm going to press that right down into the center of our big bow. And this swag is finished, you guys. How stinking cute did this turn out? Okay, let's move on to our next design. Next up, we'll be making a Halloween wreath using the Deco Mesh Poof and Curl method. So let me show you some of the supplies we'll be using today. This is just a super cute trick or treat sign that I picked up from a store called Gabe's. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's kind of similar to a TJ Maxx. And we're going to be using 10-inch solid black Deco mesh and 10-inch glitter orange Deco mesh. We'll be making this on the 14-inch Dollar Tree wire wreath frame. And I also picked up some standard size pipe cleaners or Chanel stems, also from the Dollar Tree. Before we dive in, let's have a little Wreath 101. So if you're new to wreath making, this is what's called a wire wreath frame. You can get them from a variety of different places, but as I mentioned, this guy actually came from the Dollar Tree. And so when you take a look at your frame, it's got a little bit of a bevel to it. As you can see, it's rounded here, and then it's flat on the back, so it can rest nicely on your door. There are 4 wire rings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's also 6 crossbars around your wreath frame. And then the distance between each crossbar is what we refer to as a section. And there are 6 sections on this wire frame. The first thing we need to do is prep our wire wreath frame to add in our Deco mesh. So if you've not already done so, go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun so that can be heating up. And we're going to grab our pipe cleaners or Chanel stems. You can grab these from Dollar Tree, any crafting store, or Amazon. And you're going to need 18 of the pipe cleaners. I always try to match my pipe cleaners as closely as I can to the colors of my wreath. However, it's not super critical because typically they're nice and tucked away. We're going to add 3 pipe cleaners per section all the way around the wire frame. And so we're going to take our first pipe cleaner and tuck that underneath rings 1 and 2. And we're going to place that right in the middle between these 2 crossbars. And you're just going to wrap that pipe cleaner around rings 1 and 2 and give it a couple of tight twists. Once you do that, point those pipe cleaners in towards the center of your wreath. And now we'll add 2 pipe cleaners around rings 3 and 4, basically centering them each a third of the way through here between these 2 crossbars. So we'll run that underneath rings 3 and 4. We're going to give those a couple of tight twists, like so. And then point those guys outwards. Let's do that one more time. Basically, you're going to want these equally spaced between the crossbars. So I've just run this pipe cleaner underneath rings 3 and 4. I'm giving it a couple of tight twists. And I'm going to poke that guy outwards. So it looks just like this. Let's do one more section together and then we'll speed ahead. So first pipe cleaner is going underneath rings 1 and 2, right in the center between the 2 crossbars. You're going to give that a couple of tight twists and point those guys towards the center of your frame. And the next 2 are going to go around rings 3 and 4, basically centered equally as best as you can between the 2 crossbars. And guys, you'll hear me say a lot, not looking for perfection here. Nobody's going to be measuring. And you can scooch them a little bit if you need to do so. And of course, those outer 2 pipe cleaners will be pointing away from the center. Excuse the background noise, guys. The neighbor is mowing. All right, now that we've completed the first 2 sections of our wreath frame, go ahead and repeat the same process, adding 3 pipe cleaners to each section all the way around your frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now I've added all of my pipe cleaners into my wreath frame, so you should have a total of 18, 3 per section. So now we're going to flip this guy over. And now what we're going to do is just add a pea-size amount of glue at one of the connecting points where the pipe cleaner meets our wire frame, just to keep those guys from sliding around. I'm going to lay a couple of pieces of old cardboard underneath my wreath frame, just so I don't get any glue on my cutting mat here. And again, so your pipe cleaners attach at 2 spots. You only need to add your pea size amount at 1. That's just to keep it from sliding. Just like so. And if any of your pipe cleaners shifted while you were moving your frame around, go ahead and scoot them back in place before you add your glue. I'm going to give this just a couple of seconds here to let the glue stop dripping, and then I'm going to set our wreath frame here off to the side so we can work on the next step. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get our sign prepped. Now, because this is a heavier sign, I'm going to actually staple some pipe cleaners to the back of this guy to really ensure a good hold. If you don't yet have a crafter's stapler, they're basically more heavyweight than a desktop office stapler, but far less heavy duty than a garage stapler. And they're great for just stapling down pipe cleaners or floral wire stems into your signs and embellishments to really hold those guys in place. If you don't have one, I will leave a link for you below in the description of this video so that you can snag one and add it to your wreath making toolkit. But in the meantime, just go ahead and cut some scrap ribbon. Lay your pipe cleaner down, add a ton of hot glue, cut about 1 inch to 2 inches piece of ribbon and place it on top of that hot glue. Give it a good 30-second hold and set it off to the side to dry for a good 15 minutes, and that should do the trick. But if you're going to staple, like I am, I'm going to come to this far edge here because the sign isn't quite as wide as my normal signs. And so what I'm going to do is staple it as close to the edge as I can without, there we go, letting that staple poke through on the side, just like so. So it's probably 1/4 inch in. And then it looks just like this, guys. And then for some extra measure, I always like to run a little zigzag of hot glue right on top of that stapler, just to make sure that guy's not going to go anywhere. And now we're going to sit this off to the side so that it can be drying while we work on adding the deco mesh into our wreath. So go ahead and grab your wire wreath frame and bring it back to your work area. And you're also going to need a standard size ruler, and you'll want to have a pair of scissors handy. Today we're going to do the poof and curl method as we add our deco mesh in. And we're going to use the black 10-inch deco mesh for the poofs, guys. And so this is just a plain, fairly see-through 10-inch standard black deco mesh. And what I want you to do, as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You want it to be curl side down. And you're just going to lay that down in your work area. I've given myself about 18 inches or so of mesh to work with. And we're going to scrunch and gather the mesh into our fingertips to get it anchored down into our wreath frame. So I'm going to take my thumbs and leave them stationary. They're going to hold my deco mesh. And then I'm going to use my 8 fingers to just scrunch and gather the mesh back into our hand like so. So you've got this little tail. Now take that tail and fold that back under and grab a hold of it again. And what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your deco mesh. If you're new to working with deco mesh loves to fray. And so anything we can do as creators to help prevent the fray is always ideal. So keep a hold of that deco mesh. And at this point, our wreath frame has no top or bottom. We're going to start on the outer level. at any of these pipe cleaners. So just come to any set of pipe cleaner ties on the lower level or outer level, open them into a wide V. Take that tail of deco mesh and you're going to place that all the way down to the base of that V so that it's laying right on top of your frame. You'll have about an inch tail, and then just take those pipe cleaners and give them a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy down. So once you've got that anchored down, it's time to make our first poof. And we're going to make 10-inch poofs. And so you're going to take your standard ruler, lay it right on top of the ties that we're anchored down to, come out to that 10-inch mark. And again, guys, not looking for perfection here. No one's going to measure your poofs. And then you're going to scrunch and gather your mesh into your hand like so. Keep it pinched between your fingers and come to that very next set of pipe cleaners. Place that pinched area all the way down to the base of the V, like so, and then give that 2 tight twists. And point those guys back outwards. And you've just made your first 10-inch poof. So let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. Grab your standard ruler, lay it down at your most recently set of used pipe cleaners, identify that 10-inch mark. Pinch and gather your mesh into your fingers. Hang tight with that. Come to your next set of pipe cleaners and we're just staying on that lower level, guys. Take that pinch of deco mesh and place it all the way down at the base of that V. And give it a couple of tight twists. Go ahead and add your 10-inch poofs all the way around your lower level, and then I'll meet you back here so that we can jump to the upper level. All right, it's time to add our last lower level poof. And so we're going to follow that same method, friends. Just go ahead and place your ruler down on your most recent set of ties. Come out to that 10-inch mark. Scrunch and gather your mesh. And we're going to come to where we added our tail in at the beginning and carefully untwist that pipe cleaner. And then add that last poof right on top of that tail, all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. And you've just added your last lower level poof. And so now it's time to jump to the upper level. And so to do that, you're going to take your deco mesh, gather it into your hand, and you're going to pull it cleanly and tautly. There's no poof at this point. And we're going to go up into the next or closest set of ties. And we're going to come in behind that set of ties, keeping our mesh taut. Just like so. We're going to go all the way at the base of that V of our chenille stems or pipe cleaners and make a couple of tight twists. And now you can see that we've just successfully jumped our mesh from the lower level to the upper level right here. And it's a nice clean taut piece of mesh. And now we can go about adding our upper level poofs. We'll follow the same method that we used on the lower level with one exception. Your upper level poofs will only be 8-inch poofs instead of 10. We like those upper level poofs to recede in a little bit on your wreath so that that outer ring really can shine and doesn't get covered up. So we'll lay our ruler onto our set of ties at the upper level. We'll come out 8 inches. We'll scrunch and gather. It's a little bit trickier for the upper level because you have to work around your lower level poofs, but certainly manageable. And just like the lower level, we'll come to that next set of ties, open them up into a wide V, place that deco mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give it a couple of tight twists. So let's go ahead and add our 8-inch poofs all the way around the upper level of our wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, it's time to add our last upper level poof. So I'm just going to add my ruler on top of my most recent set of ties. Identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather, and we're going to come over here to where we jumped our mesh up earlier. And again, carefully untwist those ties. And then lay that mesh right on top of where we jumped up from the lower level, all the way down at the base, and give it a couple of tight, tight twists. Just going to fluff out that poof here. And we've just added our last upper level poof. And so now it's time to cut off this deco mesh. And so you want to be careful here, friends, that you don't accidentally cut a poof or something that you don't mean to. And so what I do is just gather my mesh here, pull it together cleanly and tautly, and then I put my hand behind it to serve as kind of a guard so I don't accidentally cut something I'm not supposed to. I come up a good inch to 1.5 inches, and then I cut that off. That nice little tail there will keep anything from coming undone, and don't worry, friends, nobody's going to see that. So as you can see, we've begun to get some coverage, but it's still pretty light and airy. So we need to move on to round 2 of the deco mesh process. So go ahead and sit that wreath base off to the side, and you're going to need either your self-healing mat and a rotary cutter, which, by the way, friends, if you're new to wreath making, the rotary cutter is really one of the first things you should add to your wreath making toolkit. It basically is like a mini pizza cutter, and it lets you cut your deco mesh quickly and with nice clean lines. I'll make sure I leave a link for this for you below. If you don't have a rotary cutter and a self-healing mat, no worries, just grab your ruler or tape measure and a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to cut the deco mesh into pieces for our curls. And so remember, we've got 18 sets of pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. So we're going to need 18 pieces of the black and 18 pieces of the orange. We're going to cut our deco mesh into 10-inch pieces. So you're going to need 18 10-inch pieces of the black and 18 10-inch pieces of the orange, and then I'll meet you back here. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to our work area here. And I would recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin or something of the sort. These actually came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree. And we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of pipe cleaner all throughout our wreath base. So I'm going to scooch that back just a little bit. And let me show you how to make a curl, friends. It's super quick and easy. You're just going to grab a piece of your deco mesh. We'll be adding 1 black and 1 orange curl to every single set of ties. Put that in your work area, and as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You'll want to keep that curl side up, and you're basically just going to roll this guy into a cylindrical tube, just like so. And so that middle area is probably 1 inch or so in diameter, and then of course it flares at each end. So once you've made your first curl, grab your clip and just pinch that guy in the middle to hold it in place. And then grab the next color and do the exact same thing. Lay it down in your workstation, curl side up, and roll your piece of mesh into a cylindrical tube, just like so. So now we've made our second curl. We're just going to place 1 curl on top of the other into a sloppy X, and you can come to any set of ties on your work frame here, friends, because you're going to add 1 orange and 1 black to every single set of ties. So you'll just come to any set of ties, place that deco mesh curl X right down to the base of those pipe cleaners, and give them a couple of tight, tight twists, just like that. We've just added 2 curls to our first set of pipe cleaner ties. So go ahead and add 2 curls, 1 black and 1 orange, to every single set of ties throughout the entire wreath frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, now that we've added our curls into every single pipe cleaner tie on our wreath base, just look at the quick transformation we made. What a fantastic base. At this point, this guy is about 24 inches in diameter, so it's going to be a great size wreath, and it's probably every bit of 8 inches thick. Let's just see. About 6 inches thick. So it should fit between a standard door and a screen door. So it's time to move on to the next step. And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to do with my sign, I've actually decided to place mine right in the center of my wreath. You could also place it towards the bottom, off to one side or another, totally up to you. But mine's going to be sitting here once it's time to add that in. So I just wanted to share that with you real quickly. And let's talk about our very next step. So you're going to need some orange Deco mesh tubing and some black Deco mesh tubing. These both came from the Dollar Tree. And then you're also going to need a 1.5 inch orange based ribbon and a 1.5 inch black and white buffalo check. Those are both going to match with our sign. Super cute. We're going to place one ribbon tail in every single set of pipe cleaners with the exception of one on the upper level. So remember, we have 18 sets of ties. We're saving one set of ties for a bow. So we need 17 pieces in total of our 1.5 inch ribbon. You can choose which one you have 8 of and which one you have 9 of. I'm going to do 9 of the buffalo check. So let me show you really quickly an easy way to quickly cut some ribbon tails. I want your ribbon tails to be 11 inches in length. So just roll out first ribbon. Guys, I'm sorry for the noise in the background. The neighbor is still doing some yard work. So you're just going to roll out your ribbon. Identify your 11-inch mark and just pinch it with your finger. And then fold your ribbon back and forth accordion style until you have the number of pieces that you need. Once you have the total number of pieces, in my case 9, I chose to do 9 of the black and white buffalo check, trim off the rest of your ribbon. And then you're just going to want to make sure your stack is put together nicely and your ends are marrying. And you can either choose to dovetail your ends or angle trim. I'm going to angle trim. And so I've not even separated them, guys. I'm just going to come down about 1 inch, cut up on the diagonal to give me that angle cut. And then I'm going to flip my stack over. I'm going to make sure those ends are married up nicely. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, just like so. And then once you're done, you've got the total number of tails that you need. They're all equally measured. And when you cut them, you've already trimmed your ends. Easy breezy. So now repeat that same step with your orange ribbon, and I'll meet you back here. Now that our ribbon tails are all cut and trimmed and ready to go, we're going to sit those off to the side and prepare our Deco mesh pieces. So if you're new to working with Deco mesh tubing, friends, it's basically 1/4 inch in diameter, and it's really flexible and pliable, but it also squishes out pretty quickly. And so when you're working with Deco mesh, you don't want to pull on it. You just want to let it lay organically as you're crafting with it, and let it lay as it wants to so that it doesn't flatten out. And we're going to need 8 pieces of one color and 9 pieces of the other color, measured at 21 inches in length. So I'm just going to measure that out, and remember, I'm letting it lay organically and I'm not pulling on it. I'm going to identify that 21-inch mark and cut it off, and then I can use this piece as my measuring piece. And doesn't need to be perfect, friends. Nobody's going to be measuring. So go ahead and cut 8 pieces of one color, 9 pieces of the other at 21 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. All right, all of my Deco mesh pieces are cut and ready to go. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to your workstation and go ahead and grab a small pair of snips or a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to add our ribbon tails and deco mesh bows into all of our wire ties or pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. Now remember, we're going to add one set of ribbon tail and deco mesh combo to every single set of ties, with the exception of one on the upper level. It doesn't matter, you know, which set of ties you reserve for the bow, because at this point we've not added our sign, so there's no top or bottom. Just remember, one set of ties on the upper level. Don't add in any tails because we're going to add a bow. And so we've got our solid orange ribbon and then our black and white buffalo check ribbon. And then we've got our black deco mesh tubing and our orange. And so what we're going to do, I always like to start on the lower level. You can start anywhere you'd like. I'm going to grab a single piece of ribbon because we're going to add one ribbon tail with one piece of deco mesh to every single set of ties. You're going to identify that center point either by eyeballing it, or if you prefer, you can fold it in half and then that line will give you that center point. You're just going to pinch it in the middle so it looks like a men's bow tie. And then you're going to kind of fold it into a loose V over your thumb. You'll come to any set of ties. I'm going to marry the orange ribbon with the black deco mesh tubing, and then I'll marry the orange black deco mesh tubing with the black and white buffalo check ribbon, but you can certainly add them in as you wish. So we folded that into a V. I'm going to lay it down here in my work area. I'm going to grab a piece of my tubing, and remember, we're not going to pull tautly because it will flatten it out. And with my hand, I'm going to take an end of the tubing and just lay it in my hand, pinching it with my thumb, and I'm just going to make a figure 8, just like so. And you want 1 inch to 1.5 inches of tubing left over on each end so that it doesn't come undone. But, you know, again, guys, not looking for perfection. So you can see that my loops are not the same size. It is okay. Now I'm going to add that right on top of my ribbon tail. And I'm going to come to any set of ties on my wreath base. I'm going to add that guy in all the way down to the base of those ties. I'm going to give those ties a couple, 2 or 3 tight twists. Then I'm going to take my snips and trim off the remaining bits of those ties because we aren't going to add anything else into them. You can throw those away. I'll just fluff my tails out, and by fluffing them out, I'm just making sure they're pointing away from the center of the wreath. And I've given them a little curve with my finger. And then I'm just going to leave my deco mesh tube bow as it is and let it lay where it wants to lay. And then we'll move on to the next. So I'm going to go back and forth between the color combinations. So this time I'm grabbing my buffalo check. I'm eyeballing to find the center. I'm pinching in the middle. I'm folding it down over my thumb. This time I'm going to grab my orange deco mesh tubing. I'm going to fold it into a figure 8 and leave a bit of tail on each end. And I'm going to place this guy into the very next set of ties. I'm placing it all the way down to the base of those pipe cleaner ties. I'm going to give them 2 or 3 super tight twists. And then I'm going to grab my snips and trim off the excess bits of those pipe cleaners. Then I'm going to come back in here and just pull my ribbon forward. So run my fingers over them and move on to the next. So go ahead and add 1 ribbon tail and 1 deco mesh tube bow to every single set of ties with the exception of 1 on your upper level, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now we've added our ribbon tails and our deco mesh tube bows to every single set of ties on our frame with the exception of 1 on the upper level, and look how stunning this beauty is turning out to be. I cannot wait to see it come together. And so now the next step is to add in our sign. So you're going to want to be mindful and identify the set of ties that you've reserved on the upper level, and depending on where you would like to place your sign into your wreath, you're just going to want to make sure that it's in good coordination with those ties. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to add mine to the center of my wreath and down just a tad. And so my ties are here in the upper left-hand corner between 10 and 11 on a clock. And so what I'm going to do is take my 2 zip ties and just give them a couple twists here and add my sign into my frame. And so I'm going to poke these ties through, and I'm going to make sure they're wrapped around at least 2 of the rings of the wire frame so that they're nice and stable. And then I'll meet you back here. So I've just flipped my wreath over for you so that you could see this, friends. And I'm going to just make sure that that's nice and tight. I'm twisting those pipe cleaners several times. And I always prefer, if it's possible, based on your placement, that at least one set is tied around a crossbar. That just keeps your attachment or your sign from sliding around. And so now I've given each set of ties several tight twists. And now I'm just going to trim off my ends here. And then I'm going to take my fingers and just poke that tie kind of back under so it doesn't scratch my customer's door. And then I like to take my hot glue gun and just put a little dollop of glue right over where that pipe cleaner meets the wire frame, just to help give it some stability and helps to reduce the slide of your sign. We'll give it about a minute here to dry. If you're new to working with hot glue, when you put hot glue on to your attachment, it comes out clear. And as it dries, it turns this milky color. And that's how you can tell when your glue is dry and you can move on to the next step. While that glue is drying, you guys, I have to show you something. I've had several people ask me about this. And I'm kind of late to the game with this, but you know, you've seen me grab a couple drinks here and there throughout my videos if you're not new to my channel. And I recently bought this Hydro Flask water bottle. It comes in a million different sizes and colors, different types of tops. But you know, when I'm talking during my wreath videos, I get frequent drinks. And I just recently purchased this, and this guy stays cold forever. I wish I would have bought one of these eons ago. Basically, I fill this with, I don't know, maybe a half a cup of ice and water. And I usually drink a couple of these a day, and I don't have to replace my ice at all. In fact, the next day, there's still some ice in there. This thing is like magic. Anyway, I've had lots of you ask, so I just wanted to show you what it was. It's a Hydro Flask. I'll leave a link for you below. I actually grabbed it from Amazon, and I love, love, love it. All right, now that our glue is dry, let's flip this beauty back over. Look how stinking cute that is. If you've got any ribbon tails or curls, Deco mesh curls or tubing bundles that you wanted to pull out and free from behind your sign, just go ahead and do that now. And here's our reserved set of ties or chenille stems for a bow. And so I'm going to grab some ribbon and we'll make a quick bow to add up into the corner. All right, I'm going to scoop my wreath off to the side so that we can make this quick bow. And I'm going to make a simpler bow, guys, because I think I'm going to add a little bitty buffalo check pumpkin into the center of this. So I've grabbed a buffalo check 2.5-inch wired ribbon and a glittery orange with some black and white trim, 1.5-inch wired ribbon. Just use any coordinating ribbon that you have. Any kind is fine as long as it's wired. And then you'll need a zip tie or a chenille stem or something to secure your bow. And friends, I know that bows are really the toughest part of wreath making when you first start out. It was for me too. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through making this bow. But I will leave a couple of step-by-step slow-moving bow making tutorials for you in the description of this video so that you have that if you need to reference it. So work with me here real quickly while I make our bow. All right, I've quickly made my bow here and secured it down with a 6-inch zip tie. Just going to trim off those ends, and I've literally just got 2 loops and 2 tails of each ribbon type here. And we're going to get our wreath back into our work area and add this guy into our chenille stems. Now let me show you a little trick. Sometimes when you add your bows, you need them to be secure, of course, but maybe the chenille stems are recessed really deeply as this is, and you don't want to push your bow all the way down to the base, because then it's going to get lost in your wreath. So what you can do is take your zip tie and create a false bottom by giving it a couple of twists closer towards the surface where you want your ribbon to lay. Now, some people prefer to fluff their bows prior to adding it in. I actually do so after. You can do whatever method is comfortable for you. So I'm just going to lay this guy right on top of those pipe cleaners and give them several tight twists. Normally I would trim off those excess bits, but because they're so short, I'm just going to curl those guys back and out of the way, like so. And now I will fluff out my bow. And then grab your scissors and trim your ends. Again, dovetail or angle, either is fine. How stinking cute. All right, it's time for the last step. So I grabbed a bag of these foam pumpkins from Hobby Lobby. They are just under 2 inches in diameter, and they're foam with cloth covering. And originally I was going to add one to the center of my bow, but I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to place 3 around our wreath here. And I'm going to use 3 of the same size of these buffalo check. Just ties really nicely with our sign. And let me show you how we're going to attach them in, friends. So anytime I'm working with florals on any project, if it's got a really sturdy base or stem, wire stem, I keep these guys because they're great to add embellishments into your wreaths. And let me show you what I mean. So I just keep these in a jar on my work area. I'll trim off a stem here, and I always leave it a little bit longer. You can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. Then I'll decide where I want to lay my embellishments. So I think for the purposes of this wreath, we're going to go like so. So a couple of them are at an angle. Then I'll take my snips and just kind of cut a little hole. And I'll poke that piece of stem right down in there. I'll pull it back out and add a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch little bitty bead of hot glue. Just make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. And I'll poke it back in. And then what you can do is just add that guy right down in there for your embellishment. So I'm going to run about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch bead of glue at the end here. And then I'm going to come over to my wreath and add that guy right down in. And now I know it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm not counting on that mesh alone to hold that fellow in place. I'm going to do the same thing for these next 2. All right, friends, this beauty is finished. How stinking cute did this turn out? I will add a picture of this hanging on my door at the end of this video. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed creating with me today. And of course, if you're new here, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's move on to our next design. Let's make this Dollar Tree fall wreath using the bubble deco mesh method. Today we're going to make a super cute fall, Halloween, a little bit in the middle, so we'll call it Falloween wreath using primarily all Dollar Tree items. We're going to make our deco mesh wreath on a 14-inch Dollar Tree wire frame. For those of you that are new to wreath making, let's have a little bit of Wreath 101. So this is a wire wreath frame. It comes in a variety of different sizes. We nearly always will use on this channel the 14-inch. Again, it came from Dollar Tree. And as you can see, it's flat on the back, so it can rest nicely against your door. And then the top side has a bit of a bevel. There are 4 rings that go around the wire frame. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 6 crossbars for stability all the way around the frame. And then the space between each crossbar is what we consider a section. And there are 6 sections across this frame. So let me show you what we're going to use today. I've got 6 rolls of the 6-inch deco mesh from Dollar Tree. So I've got 2 of each of these colors. It's a brown and tan stripe, a pretty sage green with some gold ribbon throughout, and a pretty pumpkin orange. You're also going to need lots of 6-inch zip ties. You can also use pipe cleaners if you prefer. I will leave a full materials list for you below in the description of this video so that you can recreate this if you'd like to do so. And if you'd rather not create this and you would just like to purchase this wreath, I'll leave a link for you to do so below. All right, friends, today we are going to make what's called a deco mesh bubble wreath. You're also going to need a standard ruler. Again, you're going to need 2 rolls of the orange, 2 rolls of the brown and tan, and 2 rolls of the sage green. And here's what we're going to do, guys. This is going to seem a little strange, so work with me. First of all, if you are new to deco mesh loves to fray, and it loves to grab a hold of itself. And the bubble method is a really great method to not completely eliminate the fray, but basically, because there's very few cuts on this deco mesh, therefore very few raw edges. And if you've heard me say before, if you're not new to the channel, I'm going to be transparent with you and tell you I don't generally like to work with the Dollar Tree deco mesh. It's just a little bit too see-through for my liking, generally speaking, and frays more than usual. However, the only exception to my rule is for this particular method, known as the bubble method. And this is just a recipe, guys. You can sure recreate this as you would like to do so. What we're going to do here, this is going to seem strange, is layer our 3 different colors of deco mesh right on top of one another. And it doesn't matter what order you put these in, because we're going to be separating them out later, and there won't really be any rhyme or reason. So as you can see, I've taken all 3 of my colors. They're laid nicely on top of one another. And now what I'm going to do at the edge here, I'm going to take my fingers and scrunch and gather this mesh back into my fingers, and so it's nicely gathered, and I've got a little inch or so tail. I'm going to cut off these scragglies, and I'm going to take my 6-inch zip tie, and again, if you prefer, feel free to use pipe cleaners, and we're going to start at any crossbar on the frame, friends. At this point, we don't have a top or bottom, so it doesn't matter which crossbar you start at, just any crossbar. And for this wreath, we're only going to be using the inner 2 metal rings. So we won't use the 2 outsides, just these 2 middle 2. We're going to take this tail of deco mesh and place it on our crossbar so that it overlaps one side by a solid inch or so. And then we're going to take our tie and we're going to come beneath this crossbar. And then I'm going to take that zip tie and I'm going to cinch that guy down tight, 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 because this is what we're using to anchor down our mesh. So let me flip that over. You can see that I kind of went catty corner over this crossbar to make sure it doesn't slide around. You'll also need a small pair of snips or a really good pair of scissors so that you can cut off your excess bits of zip tie or pipe cleaners as we go. And I'm going to try to keep, a good 10 inches or so of the mesh rolled out at all times. And so now what we're going to do is have a pile of zip ties or pipe cleaners within arm's reach here, which, by the way, if you do use pipe cleaners, go ahead and cut those guys in half. You don't need the full length, and you might as well, to get the most money out of your product. And our bubbles are going to be 8 inches in length. So what we're going to do is take our ruler, lay it down where we've anchored it, identify that 8-inch mark, and friends, nobody's looking for perfection here. No one's going to measure your bubbles. Once you've identified that 8-inch mark, you're going to scrunch and gather just like we did before. And you'll have to continually roll out your mesh here so that you've got some wiggle room. We're going to come back to the frame and create our first bubble. So I'm going to place it between those 2 middle rings. I'm going to take my zip tie or my chenille stem and run it underneath those 2 rings. And then I'm going to cinch this guy down nearly as tight as I can with just a hair of wiggle room, because before I cinch down my bubble, I need to scoot it all the way over to the left where we anchored it. So I'm just going to push that guy over as far as it'll go and then finish cinching down that zip tie. And I'm going to trim off that excess bit. So we've just added our very first bubble. And again, it's placed between those 2 center rings, and then our zip tie is wrapped around those 2 center rings to anchor that guy down. And we're going to add 7 bubbles per section. So what we'll do for this video, friends, we're going to go ahead and complete the first section together, and then we'll speed ahead. So again, place your ruler on top of your zip tie or pipe cleaner, identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather your mesh together, unroll your rolls of mesh a little bit to give you some wiggle room, come onto your frame, and we're going to take our pipe cleaner and run it underneath rings 2 and 3, those 2 middle rings. We're going to cinch it nearly all the way down, scooch that guy all the way over, and then finish zipping it down. And we'll trim off our excess bit of zip tie. Maybe, here we go. So we've added our first 2 bubbles. Let's move on to the third. All right, we've just added our first 7 Deco Mesh bubbles into our first section. Your wreath should look something like this. If you notice, it's tightly scrunched together at one spot and looser at the other, you can certainly slide them around so that they're equally spaced within that section. And what we're going to do at this point is basically repeat the same pattern all the way around our wreath frame. Now, approximately halfway around, you are going to run out of mesh and need to start a new roll. Just anchor it down just like we did when we started, friends, and continue on with your bubbles. All right, let's get our wreath full of our Deco Mesh bubbles, and I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got my bubble wreath totally filled in, and I added 7 bubbles to every single section. However, friends, and this is not uncommon with Dollar Tree mesh, in my very last section, I've only got 5 bubbles because the mesh ran short. So if that happens to you also, it's no big deal. That's just where we will add our bow to help fill in and hide the fact that we're short a couple of bubbles. So this is what your wreath should look like on the front, and then on the back, it's pretty clean. It should look something like this. And our next step is to spread our Deco Mesh bubbles. And so right now we have layered them one on top of another while we were adding them into our wreath. And so now you're just going to work your way around your wreath bubble by bubble and just kind of pull those mesh layers apart. And there's no rhyme or reason to how you do this. It just helps it fill out a little bit more, helps those colors to all shine. And so as you can see, I'm just separating bubble by bubble. And if I pull my orange to the outside on one bubble, then the next one I try to pull it on the inside, and vice versa. I just basically don't want all of my colors following the same pattern. So take a couple of minutes and pull your Deco Mesh bubbles, layers apart a little bit, and then I'll meet you back here. I've just finished separating out all of my Deco Mesh bubbles, and how stinking cute is this? I'm hoping the camera can capture that for you. You definitely see all of the colors peeking through, that browns, orange, and sage green, and yet they all somehow just blend nicely together. Super stinking cute. And so now that we've added our Deco Mesh bubbles, our 14-inch frame is now a 20-inch in diameter wreath. So it's definitely giving it lots of great coverage. So go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun while I grab some ribbon and embellishments. So I grabbed this orange 2.5-inch velvet wired ribbon from the Dollar Tree. It's only 36 inches in length. It's just going to make a bow for us that has 2 loops and 2 tails. And let me show you an easy way to make a quick bow. What we're going to do to make a super quick and easy bow out of a 36-inch piece is take our ribbon and shape it into an awareness bow. And the important thing here, friends, is that your tails are essentially the same length from that center point, and that the pretty side is facing forward. And then you've got the awareness piece here. And all you do is pinch that guy down into your hand and scrunch it together. And you've immediately just created a super quick and simple bow. I'm going to do the exact same thing with my scrap piece of 1.5-inch black and white striped. So making that awareness ribbon just like we did before. And I'm layering one right on top of the other. My tails are essentially the same length. I'm just going to pinch that together like so. And then I'm going to take my pipe cleaner and wrap that guy right around there and give it 2 or 3 tight twists. And don't worry if your bow gets a little lopsided, guys. This is wired ribbon, so we can reshape it once we're ready to do so. So essentially in total, we've got 4 loops and 4 tails. And remember, I was short a few bubbles, so I'm going to flip it over and just basically see where I have less of my zip ties. That will be right here because I want to add that bow into that section to help hide that fact. So I'm just going to run that pipe cleaner right through my wreath frame, and I'm going to make sure that that pipe cleaner is wrapped around those middle 2 rings. That'll keep it from sliding. I'm going to make sure it's still where I want it. You don't want it to sink too far down into your wreath. Once I know I'm happy with that placement, I'll give it a couple of more twists, and then I'm going to take my snips and just trim off that excess bit. Pipe cleaner, since we're finished, and tuck that little tail right out of the way, just like so. And I'm just making sure my tails are going the right direction, friends, but I'm not going to trim them or give them that final fluff until the very end. All right, and then for some embellishments, we're going to add in these glittery, sparkly leaves in shades of reds and oranges and yellow. They actually came from Walmart, and it's called the Oak Leaf Bush, and it was only a couple of dollars. I'm going to place one cute little stem behind each side of the bow. So I've left about 1.5 inches of stem. I'm going to run a bead of hot glue on that to make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to move my loops a little bit and tuck our cute little leaves in. And we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And I think I'm going to take 2 more of the picks here that have a little bit fewer of the leaves. And we're going to add those on this side as well, about 2 inches apart from where we added the first bunch. Just running a bead of glue on that stem, about 1 inch worth. And sliding that guy right down in there, just like so. How stinking cute is that? So I've got 1 more stem left on my bush. We might as well use that. And we'll just glue them down in. So we've got a full of leaves at the top, and we did a slow fade towards the bottom. The last thing I want to do is just curl my tails a little bit. This is just a 1 inch in diameter old tube I had from some Deco mesh that I keep in my toolbox. It's great for curling ribbon. You just wrap that right around that guy and curl it as tightly or as loosely as you would like. I think I'll angle cut this orange felt. You could also dovetail if that's your preference. And that is all there is to it, friends. We have finished this super cute, super simple Dollar Tree wreath. And depending on the embellishments that you add into this wreath, it's just going to cost you $10 to $15. I hope you enjoyed it creating with me today. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Okay, let's move on to our next design. Next up, we'll be making a quick and easy fall grapevine wreath. We're going to use this really cute welcome to our home fall sign. This actually came from Hobby Lobby. Go ahead and have your glue gun plugged in and ready to go before we give this project a start. I'm just going to cut off this twine hanger. We don't need that. We're just going to quickly prep our sign here, friends, so that it can be drying. The glue can be drying while we prepare our grapevine. What we're going to use today are some 1-inch mounting brackets. Here's a quick view of the top and the bottom. If you're new to wreath making and not familiar with mounting brackets, they're basically a wreath maker's best friend. So they come in, I think, quantities of 100 for just a few dollars, and they're an inch by an inch square. There are holes all the way around this bracket so that you can run your pipe cleaner, your floral wire stems, or whatever you're using to attach your sign or embellishments down into your wreath. And then the back side is just some super sticky 3M tape. So I'm just going to put one on each side as far to the edge as I can get it. And with mounting brackets, guys, you don't need to worry about it being square or straight. Nobody's ever going to see it. So I'm just adding that to my sign and giving it a good long push here. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. After I've given those both a good push, I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just run a quick bead of glue all the way around both of those brackets. Just gives it a little bit of extra strength and stability. Perfect. And now we'll set this guy off to the side to dry while we prep our base. So we're going to build the wreath on an 18-inch round grapevine wreath base. All of the supplies that we use today for this wreath, friends, is from Hobby Lobby. And I've already cleaned and prepped my wreath. And by clean and prep, all I do is run through my wreath, pull off any loose things, go ahead and trim off any extra twigs that are a little bit too long for my liking. Looks like I missed one. And toss those away. For this next part, you're going to need a handful of zip ties, thinner gauge floral wire, or pipe cleaners. And we're actually going to use, this is what makes this method kind of a quick and easy method, guys. We're going to use a 6-foot fall garland. I'm hoping the camera is capturing this for you well. There's lots of different colors of leaves, some fall berries, and some different sizes of acorns on a really nice wire base. This is a 6-foot long garland. And so when I'm using a garland method for my quick and easy wreaths, I always start at the bottom. I've just grabbed some 6-inch zip ties. Again, you could use floral wire or pipe cleaners if that's easier. And we're going to place the sign directly in the center here, friends. So we're going to need the garland to go all the way around the grapevine. Now, if you wanted to put your sign off to the side, you could sure do that. Just make sure you leave a little bit of a clearing for wherever you'd like to add that sign in. And so all I'm going to do here, guys, is take my garland. It's going to be in the center of the grapevine all the way around. And we're just going to zip tie this guy in. And I like to run my zip ties where I can safely hide them. And so you just want to run them through the grapevine, not around. That way your customer or your guests don't see the mechanics of your wreath. And you want to make sure you're cinching them down pretty good. And then you'll just use a good pair of scissors or your small snips to trim off that excess bit of zip tie or floral wire or chenille stems, whatever you've decided to use. And I'm going to add a zip tie about every 6 to 8 inches. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes here to get this wrapped all the way around here. So once you get to the last little bit here where you're going to fasten down your garland, just kind of eyeball where you want that to end. And then with your heavy duty cutters, go ahead and trim off that tail end, which is about a foot or so, of your garland, and set it off to the side. And then we'll just anchor this last bit down onto the grapevine base, making sure it's nice and tucked away. All right, guys, so now we've got our garland secured down onto the grapevine base, and that's all we've done. So this is what it looks like at this point. Still looking the same from the back. And remember that these garlands from Hobby Lobby are on a wire spine. So take a couple of minutes and just go through the garland and fluff out your leaves and berries and acorns so that they're all laying nicely, pointing in a good direction, and you're happy with the placement. And you want to make sure, as you're bending these pieces around, that you're covering up or ensuring that they're covered. The zip ties or floral wire or whatever you used to anchor down your garland. So I'm just spreading them apart, giving them a nice flow, making sure those cute little acorns are popped up. And remember, you can fluff out and up. How stinking cute is this at this point, guys? What an easy way to fill out, or beginning filling out, a wreath base. Now remember, we've still got this foot of leftover garland. You can save this for another project. I'm going to actually keep it off to the side, and we might break that down and use some of these pieces as filler for our wreath. So go ahead and grab your sign. At this point, it should be nice and dry, and we need to get this guy anchored down into our wreath. And so I'm going to flip that over so that the mounting brackets are facing us. I would recommend using some thinner gauge floral wire stems. This is what floral wire stems look like, friends. They actually come in bulk from Amazon. These are 20 gauge and they're 16 inches in length, and I find that they are perfect for nearly any embellishment or sign addition. And so all you're going to do is take your floral wire stem. Also, you could use just floral wire from a spool if that's what you have available. You could use a longer zip tie. You could even use pipe cleaners or chenille stems if that's easier. I just bend that guy in half so that that center point of the V has been identified, and I know that we're at the center of our stem here. I run it through that bracket and give it a couple of loose twists just so it doesn't slide out. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Once you've got those floral wire stems attached to your brackets nicely, you're just going to flip that guy over, center your sign where you'd like to place it on your wreath. Pay attention to your foliage, friends, and choose, you know, what you'd like to be top versus bottom here. And we're going to just run those floral wires right through, not around. Nobody wants to see the mechanics of the wreath. Right through the grapevine. And I recommend doing one side at a time so that you can ensure that your sign stays nice and centered and anchored down nicely. All right, friends, once your sign is fairly centered, before you finish anchoring that down, go ahead and take a minute, and any of this swag that has gotten tucked away underneath the sign, just go ahead and pull that free so that it doesn't cinch down. Hang on to that sign one more time and give it a flip. And now you can really cinch down those wires. So just go ahead and give each of those wires 4 or 5 tight twists. And then use your small snips and trim off that excess bit. You can go ahead and throw those bits away or repurpose them if you'd like. And then I'm going to grab my needle nose pliers and just pinch those ends together and kind of curl them back into the wreath. That way, when we grab it, those ends won't poke us or our customers, nor will they scratch our door. So again, any of your prettiness got moved around or accidentally pushed to the side when you added your sign in, just go ahead and make sure that's fluffed back out. And we're going to move on to the next step. I'm going to go ahead and trim down that last foot or so of the garland and repurpose it and use it as filler in our wreath. So I'm just going to kind of peel that. This is all just taped together with some pretty heavy duty floral tape. So give yourself some grace and peel off those picks that are inside that last foot. So you can trim these down as much or as little as you would like. And then we're just going to take a couple of minutes and look for any bare spots or less full than other spots throughout our wreath and get these guys glued down in. So you'll just take your pieces one by one. Now that you've got them separated and cleaned up, add a good inch or so bead of glue on those stems and just press them down into the weave of your grapevine. How stinking cute is this coming out, guys? So our last step is to add in a few of the small lightweight foam pumpkins. These also are from Hobby Lobby. And they're just a bag of decorative pieces. They come to you basically like this, different sizes. And so I'm going to add a few orange and a few white into our piece. And let me show you a wreath maker's pro tip. So anytime you're working with a floral bush and it's got a really heavy duty wired stem like this, go ahead and keep it. I just keep a jar of these off to the side of my work area, and let me show you why. These are great for making your own picks. So what we're going to do is determine where we would like it to be placed. I think right here looks good, and I'd like it to be an angle. And so on the back side of my pumpkin, I'm just going to poke this 3-inch piece of stem right down in there. I'm going to pull that guy back out. I'm going to put a pea-sized amount of hot glue there and then poke that guy right back in. And by doing that, that carries some of that glue down into the pumpkin to keep that pick from coming out. Then I'm going to run some glue all the way around that pick to hold the pick, about a quarter size amount. And then also give that some additional adherence right down onto our grapevine. And so I'm just going to clear my spot here and push that guy all the way down in, just like so. So now it's not only got that glue holding it in place, it's also got that pick that we just made. So I'm going to add a few of the pumpkins, a couple of white and a couple of orange around the wreath with this pick method. I've got my pumpkins added into my wreath, couple of orange and couple of white. It is looking super cute, and you could put a bow on this at this point if you wanted to do so, but I'm really happy with it just as it is. And so I'm going to go ahead and stick this on my front door and take a picture for you so that you can see this beauty hanging. I hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Okay, let's move on to our last wreath design. Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make this cute scarecrow hat wreath. We are going to make a scarecrow hat door hanger / wreath today using the Dollar Tree Witch's hat frame. And this is going to be a scarecrow hat, and so I want to kind of bend this top part just a little bit. You want to do it slowly. I mean, it is just a Dollar Tree frame, and I'm just giving it a little bit of a bend right here at the top, just to give it that silly scarecrow vibe. Sometimes it'll snap these crossbars. That's okay. Just curl it back around. And we're going to wrap the top part of our scarecrow hat with 5.5-inch burlap. You can grab this at any craft store or on Amazon. Again, I'll leave some links for you below in the description of this video in case you'd like to recreate it. You'll need your hot glue gun plugged in and ready to go. You're going to want to keep your scissors handy and a few 6-inch zip ties to anchor down your 5.5-inch burlap. And for better coverage, guys, I'm going to fold this in half. So it's 5.5 inches by itself, but as you can see, it's fairly see-through. And so I'm going to fold that guy in half. And I'm going to start on the very tip of our scarecrow hat, like so. I'm going to use my 6-inch zip tie to secure our burlap down, just like so. And I'll use my small snips here just to trim off that excess bit of zip tie. And then we're going to do that one more time, right around our frame and right through our burlap. You could also use Deco mesh if you prefer. I just feel like the burlap will give it more of a scarecrow feel. Perfect. Now that we've got that anchored down, we're going to take some time and wrap our burlap all the way around our entire hat until we get to the brim area. And we're going to keep our burlap folded in half, so it's going to be a little bit of a clunky pain. I apologize, but it's worth it in the end. And so you're going to fold a piece, flip your hat over, make sure those ends are married up, and wrap it again. And you want it to overlap a pretty decent amount just to really give you that good coverage, and wrap it tight, guys. Just like so. So we're just going to keep wrapping and keep making sure our ends are married together. And we're going to wrap tight, tight, tight. So let's speed ahead and keep on wrapping that top of your hat with your folded over burlap tightly and making sure those ends are married together, and I'll meet you back here. All right, once you get to your brim, go ahead and take your 6-inch zip tie, and we're going to anchor this guy down in 2 spots to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Really cinch that guy down tight and trim off those tails. So how cute is that, guys? Already so stinking cute. Now I'm going to take my glue gun, which I had turned on earlier, and I'm just going to on this back side here, not the front. Add a little pea-sized amount of glue to each of these folds on the back side here, where the burlap overlaps itself. And then, so I don't burn myself, I'll press that down with my scissors, just to make sure this guy doesn't get squirrely on us. All right, let's give this about 5 minutes to dry and I'll meet you back here. Now that our glue dollops have dried, let's flip our hat over. So remember, the seamed side and the side that has the two nubs from our zip ties is now the back. So we're going to flip that guy over and grab a handful of tan standard size length. I think they're 12 inches. Let's see. Yep, they are 12-inch long pipe cleaners. And we're going to place one right around the tip of each side of the brim, giving it a couple of tight twists. Like so. And then we're going to add a pipe cleaner around each side of our hat here on this top row. Like so, and they're going to slide a little bit, guys. Don't worry about that right now. We're going to fix that. And we're going to add one right in the middle. So you're going to kind of run that catty corner around that crossbar. And again, couple tight twists. And then we're going to come down to the lower part of our brim. We're going to add 4 more pipe cleaners. So in total, you should have 9 pipe cleaners, 1 on each side of the brim, and then 3 along the top, 1 in the center, and then 1 on either side, and 4 along the bottom. Once you've got those tied around there, and as you can see, they're squirrely, we're going to flip that over, and you'll nearly for sure have to reposition those pipe cleaners. And then I want you to take your hot glue gun and just run a little bead right over your frame there, where the pipe cleaner meets it. And that's going to keep those guys in place. And then we're going to give it a few minutes to dry. And if you're new to working with hot glue, as you can see when you put it on, it's clear. And then once it's dry, it has like a milky look. And so wait for those to dry and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, friends, so let's prepare for the next step of the process. We're going to grab 2 different types of 10-inch Deco mesh. I'm going to use this burlap colored that actually matches the burlap on her hat. And then also I've got this chocolate brown that's got some glitter ribbon striping. It's got a pretty green, orange, and like a goldish beige. And so we're going to use both of these for the next step. All right, friends, so let's get our Deco mesh prepared. The tan Deco mesh, we're going to cut 9 pieces at 25 inches in length. I'm just going to use my rotary cutter here. If you're new to crafting or wreath making and you're not familiar with a rotary cutter, it's basically like a small pizza cutter, and it lets you cut your Deco mesh really quickly and with nice clean lines. So I definitely recommend that. I'll leave a link for you below. So again, go ahead and cut 9 pieces of the tan at 25 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. Now that we've got our burlap or tan pieces of Deco mesh cut, it's time to cut our second Deco mesh. So grab your chocolate brown 10-inch Deco mesh, and we're going to cut 9 pieces at 10 inches in length. So go ahead and get those pieces cut, and I'll meet you back here. All right, our Deco mesh pieces are cut. Our glue has dried. on our pipe cleaners on our frame. And so let's bring our frame back up to our work area. It's time to add our deco mesh into each of our pipe cleaner ties. I would recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin. These actually came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree, and I'll show you why that is in just a second here. So we're going to start with the tan deco mesh that, remember, was 25 inches in length, and we're going to make cruffles, friends. And so what I want you to do is lay your deco mesh in your work area, curl side up, and at one end just curl that end in 2 or 3 times, and what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your deco mesh to keep it from fraying. We're going to do the same thing to the other end, so I'm just going to give it a couple, 2 or 3 curls, and then we're going to scrunch and gather our deco mesh right back into our fingers. So using your thumbs as the stationary holders for your curls here, then use your 8 fingers and just crawl this deco mesh right into your hand like so until you reach the end. And then what we've just made is a woodland ruffle, or also known as a cruffle. Then take your chip clip and hold that entire piece together like so. Next, you're going to grab your 10-inch piece of chocolate covered mesh, and we're going to make a curl. And to make a curl, you're just going to lay your piece of deco mesh into your work area, curl side up, and we're just going to roll this guy into a tube. So it's probably 1 inch or so in diameter in the center. And then of course it flares a bit at the end. We're going to come back to our cruffle and pinching in the middle so it doesn't come undone. We'll pinch that deco mesh material together, release our clip. We're going to add our single curl right on top in the middle so that it's seam side down. And then you're going to come over here to your wreath frame and add that guy just like this right down into the center of your ties. You can start anywhere you'd like because we're going to do the same thing for every single set. So I've just added it to the center of my pipe cleaners all the way down to the base. I'm giving those pipe cleaners 2 or 3 tight twists, and we've just added our first deco mesh cruffle and curl. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So grab your tan or burlap colored deco mesh, lay it in your work area, curl side up, curl one end 2 or 3 times to tuck away that raw edge, and then hold it in place with your clip. Spin that guy around. Do the same thing on the other end, make a couple 2 or 3 curls to tuck away that raw edge, and then crawl that mesh back into your fingers like so. And then we'll pinch it together, and then we'll hold it in place with our clip, and we'll set it off to the side. Now we're going to grab a piece of the chocolate mesh that we cut into 10-inch pieces, and we're going to roll that into a curl, which is really just a tube, so that it's about 1 inch or so in diameter in the center. We'll come back to our cruffle, pinch that cruffle tightly with our fingers so it doesn't come undone when we remove the clip. We'll add the curl right on top of our cruffle, and then we're going to come to the next set of pipe cleaners. We're going to do the same thing, placing it all the way at the base, giving it a couple of tight twists. We're going to make sure that those ends butt up together nicely, like so. We're going to do the exact same thing, making the cruffle and curl combination and adding that into every single set of pipe cleaners, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, now that we have our cruffles and curls added into the brim of our hat, how stinking cute is that? Love, love, love. So it's time for us to move on to the next step. So let's go ahead and sit our Scarecrow hat off to the side while we move on to the next step. Remember, we've got 9 pipe cleaner ties around the brim of our hat, And so what we're going to use for this last step are a few different things. This is just an orange colored Deco mesh tubing from the Dollar Tree. We're also going to use some raffia that I actually grabbed from Amazon. And I've got this super cute fall ribbon spool that came from Hobby Lobby. And again, friends, I'll have links, a list for you below in the description of this video of everything that we've used so that you can recreate if you'd like to do so. So we're going to start with our Deco mesh. We're going to add little bits of each to every single set of those 9 ties. So let's grab our scissors. Now, friends, if you've not worked with Deco mesh tubing before, it's cylindrical and probably 1/4 inch in diameter, but it flattens out really quickly. And we don't want it to flatten. We want it to stay in this nice rope tube. And so don't pull on it when you're working with it. Just let it lay organically. And so I want you to cut 9 pieces of your Deco mesh tube at 28 inches in length. And so I just measure out my first piece. And remember, you're not pulling it tautly. You're just going to let it lay naturally, and then at the 28 inch mark cut it off. Then you can just use this same piece for your measuring. So go ahead and cut 9 pieces of Deco mesh tubing at 28 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here to the side. Let's go ahead and cut some ribbon. This is just a fall ribbon spool that came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to cut 9 pieces at 28 inches in length of the yellow, the maroon, and the brown, but not the orange. So again, 9 pieces of each color at 28 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now that I've got my ribbon strands cut, it's time to cut some raffia. So if you've not worked with raffia before, friends, raffia is just a super cute but super messy product. And so we're going to need 9 bunches of our raffia, and it's kind of rolled up onto itself just as you see it here. And it's basically like straw. So I'm just going to cut some pieces that are probably 10 to 12 inches in length. And I'm just going to cut a few at a time because we can cut more off as we need it. But as you can see, it is a messy, messy product. All right, so I'm not sure if the camera is capturing this, but off to the left-hand side here, I've got my 9 pieces of orange Deco mesh tubing, the 3 different colors of ribbon strands, and a small pile of raffia. So I'm going to grab my Scarecrow hat and bring it back to our workstation. And we're going to make just little bundles of cuteness, and we're going to add the exact same thing over and over into every single set of ties throughout the brim of our Scarecrow hat. You're also going to want to grab some scissors or small snips so that we can trim off the pipe cleaners as we go. And so starting with a piece of Deco mesh tubing, you're going to lay one end in the center of your hand, and you're basically just going to make a figure 8, just like so. You're going to want a little bit of each of the ends left over so that it doesn't come unraveled, but you'll be basically making a figure 8 with the stems here. Next, we're going to add 1 strand of each of the 3 colors of ribbon, that cute mustard yellow, maroon, and brown. I'm grabbing 1 of each, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to pick them up all together and just make a ribbon figure 8 as well. Again, leaving some strands. Some of the strands sticking out at least an inch or so to 2 inches so that you've got plenty of grace and they won't come undone. If you have some lengthier pieces, just trim them off like you just saw me do. And then last but not least, I'm going to grab just a few, however many you'd like, friends, just a few pieces of raffia, and I'm going to lay that right within my bundle. And then you can just start at any set of ties here. I'll just start here so that it's in good camera view. Place that little bundle all the way down to the base of any set of ties, and you're going to give it 2 or 3 tight twists so that that cute little bundle is nice and anchored down. And then with your snips or your scissors, just trim off the remaining bits of your pipe cleaner. And we've just added our first bundle in to our cruffle. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. I'm gonna grab a piece of the Deco mesh tubing, laying the end in the middle of my hand and making a figure 8 like so. And then I'm going to grab one strand of each of the 3 colors of ribbon in my work area here. I'm just laying one on top of the other like so. I'm going to pick up the ends, keeping them all together. I'm going to make a figure 8 out of the ribbon, making sure you leave a few inches or at least an inch on each end so it doesn't come undone. And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of raffia, place that at the back of my hand. I'll move on to that next set of pipe cleaners. I'm going to place that cute little bundle all the way down to the base. And then I'm going to tie them down nice and tight, a couple, 2 or 3 tight twists. And I'm going to grab my snips and trim off the excess bits of pipe cleaner. So go ahead and repeat that same step through all of your pipe cleaner ties, friends, and I'll meet you back here. Oh my goodness, you guys, look how stinking cute this fella is turning out. All right, we've got one more step. And so I've reserved one of the ends of the pipe cleaner that I had trimmed off from our base, and let me show you why. We're going to grab some of the orange Deco mesh tubing, and we're going to make the same figure 8, about 4 loops or so on each side, and you want the whole thing to be basically not longer than 6 inches or so. So I'm just going to take my leftover bit of pipe cleaner and tie our little bundle down. And again, guys, not looking for perfection. Nobody's going to be measuring. So it's going to look something like this. And then we're going to use just a very small amount of raffia. So I'm just like that. I'm going to take another bit of leftover Chanel stem or pipe cleaner and secure that guy down like so. And again, you want sloppy, messy, perfectly imperfect little bundles here. And then I'm going to trim off my ends. I've still got my glue gun heated up off to the side here. And we'll trim off the ends from our Deco mesh tubing bundle as well. And what we're going to do at this point, friends, you're either going to want to grab a pair of scissors or a rubber fingertip. We're going to actually glue this guy right down near the top of our tip. So I'm putting 2 full squeezes. And we're going to place that guy down like that. We're going to do the exact same thing right on top of that. 2 full squeezes and then add our orange Deco mesh bundle. And we're going to press and hold. I've got mine off at an angle just because I like mine whimsical, but you could center it up if you'd like. So you're going to want to give it a good 30-second push to really let that get a nice hold. And last but not least, I have this super cute pack of burlap flowers. This also came from the Dollar Tree. So you could use the cream colored or the tan. I'm actually going to use the cream colored just to give it a little bit of a change in color. So this is what they look like, friends. They're just kind of a stiff. There's a little button in the middle and they're flat on the back. And I'm going to give 2 generous squirts of glue right on top of that orange bundle and press that guy down. And again, you want to give it a good 30-second hold, or better yet, lay something heavy on top of it to really make sure that guy is nice and in place. And that's all there is to it, friends. I hope you enjoyed creating with me today. I'm going to add a picture of this beauty hanging from my front door at the end of this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed creating with me today, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and the full materials list will be available to you in the description below on this video. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting.